So I don't know if you've noticed this. Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't. We are in the midst of a presidential election year. And as a rule, presidential election years tend to be kind of stressful, kind of divisive. 2016 is certainly no exception to that rule. In my household growing up, my dad was very, very political and very, very opinionated and would get really wound up on presidential election years. And my mom would say that all throughout their marriage, every 4 years, they lost friends because my dad didn't know when to stop talking. And now in this day and age, we're just inundated, aren't we, with information, talking. It's coming from our televisions, it's coming from our computer screens, it's coming from our phones and talk radio. And yes, we have the power to turn it off, and some of you are smart enough to do that, but I'm always afraid I'm going to miss something. And at my house, my TV's just kind of set to MSNBC. When I'm home, I have it on, and sometimes I watch, and sometimes I walk away and listen from a distance. But I've learned I cannot listen to this or watch this before bed. I just can't. I mean, it really messes with my sleep, like bad dreams. This whole election season, and I mean this whole election season, has a kind of a circus atmosphere to it, like a circus with scary clowns, And it's fear-producing and it's anxiety-producing. I think for everyone it is. So you add the violence in our country and in the world and watch that over and over and over again, and there is this sense of, where are we going? And so a few weeks ago, when I was choosing scripture for this weekend from the Revised Common Lectionary, that gives me 4 to choose from, and I saw this scripture from Hebrews, I thought this really might give us an opportunity to reboot, to reset, to remember who we are and whose we are and where we're going. And so I would like for you to just think about the word faith for a moment. Not what does your faith mean to you, and not even necessarily faith attached to our scripture today, but just the word faith. Faith is a word certainly that we use in church, but it's not a strictly churchy word. We use it not only related to God, but we use the word faith related to people. And when we say we have faith in someone, it doesn't mean we worship that person. When we say to someone, I have faith in you, we mean we believe you will follow through on whatever it is you've agreed to do, whatever you've promised to do, and we won't have to have any anxiety or any fear. No worries. Good is done. And when we say we have faith in God, we mean essentially the same thing. We mean we believe God will be with us and follow through on whatever God has promised, and we won't have to have any anxiety or fear or worries. It's good as done. See, we can believe in the existence of God, and I would assume that probably most of us sitting in this space do believe in the existence of God, but I don't assume everyone does, because we have seekers in every service, which is wonderful. But I would say that probably the majority of us would say we believe in the existence of God. And then among those who believe in the existence of God, there would be probably a pretty large number who would say, we love God. We love God. And that would indicate a relationship with God. That would indicate regular prayer time. That would indicate, that you spend probably daily time in prayer and talking to God and listening to God and paying attention. We love God, and we mean it. We can believe in the existence of God, and we can genuinely love God, and yet not have faith in the call of God. Ron Rolheiser is president of the Oblate School of Theology in San Antonio, Texas, and is a gifted author. And he writes about our scripture today, the opposite of faith in scripture is not doubt, but anxiety. To lack faith is not so much to have theoretical doubts about God's existence as it is to be anxious and fearful at a deep level. Ooh. See, if we believe in the existence of God and we love God and we are living in a kind of low-grade chronic anxiety and fear, which so many of us are, it would seem that something is amiss. Because God does not want us to live in anxiety and fear. God doesn't mind challenging us at times, but anxiety and fear, no. And so in today's scripture, part of it is about Abraham and Sarah. And this call, Abraham's call, goes back to the book of Genesis, when he went by Abram and Sarah went by Sarai. And from Genesis 12 we read, "Now the Lord said to Abram, 'Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing.' And Abram went," just like that. He had absolutely no idea where he was headed. And this was at a time when travel would not be easy. It would have been quite arduous. He had no idea how things would work out. He believed in God, he loved God, he had faith in God's call, and he just went. So when we move to our Hebrews text, the very first verse is so beautiful. "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." If we move to verse 8, "By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to set out for a place that he was going to receive as an inheritance. And he set out not knowing where he was going." We want to follow God, right? I mean, we believe in God, we love God, we want to follow God, we want to respond to God's call. But what we really want to know is where we're going first. See, we would really like to have all the details. You've got to figure out how we're going to pay for it, right? If you could just give me all the details, Lord, not just these first steps I need to take, then I could make an educated decision. If we move to verse 11, "By faith Abraham received power of procreation even though he was too old, and Sarah herself was barren, because he considered him faithful who had promised." And this is a piece where I've got to push back just a little bit. I think Abraham gets way too much credit for this offspring. It is determined that Abraham might have been about 100 years old and Sarah about 90. And he's getting the credit for this baby, you know? I mean, you go get him. But she carried this baby for 9 months and birthed it at 90 years old. I'd say that was a team effort, wouldn't you? The point of this is God continues to call us throughout our lives, a call that can come earlier in midlife. It can continue long into our later years. God continues to call us throughout our lives, and God doesn't do this to cause anxiety or fear. God does this to lessen anxiety and fear. When we're doing what God would have us do, we may feel challenged. Of course we do, because you know what? God knows we can do things that we're not sure we can do. Of course we feel challenged. But peace will take the place of anxiety and fear. And I'm pretty sure we can take comfort in the fact that God probably won't be calling any of us to be the father or mother of a new nation. We probably don't have that on our plate. But even so, when God calls you to do something, you need to understand that it's never just about you. I mean, it may feel like it. God's asking you to do something specific. But what you've got to understand is when you take that step and you do that, that leads to interactions with all kinds of people in all kinds of places. You'll influence them, they'll influence you, and that can't happen if you don't take that first step. So when was the last time God nudged you to do something. Sometimes it's little stuff, and sometimes it's more challenging stuff. And I think for many of you, it might kind of work like this. If we have daily prayer time, and it doesn't have to be lengthy, but if we have daily prayer time, we sit down with God, we talk to God, we listen. I don't know very many people who actually get the answers in that listening time. I think for many people that is quiet time just spent in the presence of God. But what that prayer time does is it opens us up for the rest of the day for all the ways God will communicate with us. And so often it's through people. It's through something you've read. It's through a piece of music. It's through something that you see. You start recognizing coincidences. See, day after day after day, things start to become clear. So when was the last time God nudged you to do something challenging? Or maybe God's doing that right now. When was the last time God nudged you to do something really challenging and you did it? See, many of you have stories like that. You can answer that question. And those are the kind of stories that really everyone needs to have a chance to hear. Those are the kind of stories the rest of us need to hear. This life you're living is a faith journey through this world. Your life is a faith journey through this world. And there's just no time to waste on chronic anxiety and fear. So where are you headed on this journey called life? Where are you going? Where's God calling you? And think about this. Imagine this. Imagine if every member of this church and every visitor of this church was in daily prayer time, talking to God, listening, spending time, and making themselves open to God's call every day, paying attention. I mean, all of us. Can you imagine what that would be like? If every one of us was seeking God's will, paying attention, can you imagine what God could do with this church? The power in that is unimaginable. Can you imagine what this church might look like? Where we could go? Where we could go together? See, I think we ought to give it a try. And I think one of the best places to start a journey is with a meal around the family table.